Sometimes, when a work of art is adapted, the smallest changes can have huge impact. An adaptation, a remake, a cover version can all take something good but do something simple that takes it to the next level, that can sometimes make you forget that the original even existed. In music, you've got Johnny Cash's version of Hurt, which even Trent Reznor admitted is the definitive version of the song. And you've got the unique case of Airplane, which is a remake of the 1950s air melodrama 0 Hour, where they took the original film and its accidental hilarity and ran with that.
Joey, here's something we give our special visitors. Would you like to have it?
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You ever been in the cockpit before?
No, sir. I've never been up in a plane before.
You ever seen a grown man naked?
What was it we had for dinner tonight?
Well, the main course was meat or fish.
Yes, I remember. I had lasagna.
Flying is no different than riding a bicycle.
Just a lot harder to put baseball cards in the spokes.
Tell him we're coming into some heavy clouds and we'll be on instruments.
This guy doing the flying's had no airline experience at all. He'll be a menace to himself and everything else in the air.
Yes, birds too.
And then there's Candyman. Bernard Rose took The Forbidden, a short story that was essentially an urban take on the Wicker Man. An outsider comes into an insular community and through manipulation and happenstance ends up being burned alive in an event with religious significance. Rose took this framework and turned it into the closest thing that the slasher genre has to art house. Except for stage fright. What did he do? Well, first he added the slashing. In The Forbidden, almost all the deaths from the backstory of the community, not through a rampage that the Candyman goes on. Hell, much the second half of the film doesn't exist because Helen was never a murder suspect. But he added much more than just the slashing. The original short story was not set in Chicago, it was set in Liverpool, England. And it's not a story about racism. The impoverished community that the Candyman hunts seems to be white working class. This tiny change alone massively added to the film's thematic richness. Rose also added some very real-world horror to the film. In 1987, a Chicago resident called Ruthie Mae McCoy frantically called 911, telling them that someone was breaking into her home through her bathroom cabinet. Even though she was killed by multiple gunshots, the police didn't enter her apartment for 2 days. The film had one of the backstory murder victims, a woman called Ruthie Jean, killed when someone entered her apartment through her bathroom cabinet, and gives Anne-Marie, the mother of the sacrificial baby and Ruthie Jean's neighbour, the surname McCoy. Rose also changed Candyman's personal interest in Helen, the lead. She's basically the same in both versions. From something pointedly rapey to something at least quasi-romantic. He also added extra levels of tragedy by creating Candyman's backstory, because he didn't have one in The Forbidden. He was just belief and fears given form by the community that he haunted. Though, haunting is really not the right word. Like in the film, they believed in him and they left him offerings, but when someone, even one of their own, was murdered by him to maintain the belief, they celebrate. Even the victim's family. This is what happens to Anne-Marie's baby. Candyman kills him as a demonstration of his power and she joins in the celebration. It's far more like a cult than anything else. Bernard Rose's choice to humanize Candyman in the film by giving him a backstory arguably made him less frightening, but the film wasn't aiming for pure horror. I really hate the term elevated horror, but that's basically what the first Candyman was. And it's as much Bernard Rose's baby as it is Clive Barker's. Anyway, now that I've talked a lot of bollocks and meandered around the subject for a while, let me get to the point. Candyman in The Forbidden was totally based on the Sixth Doctor.
You're expecting someone else?
At least visually. You see, in the original short story, he, like most of the characters, at least seems to be white, and he's totally a demonic version of the Sixth Doctor. He was bright, to the point of gaudiness, his flesh a waxy yellow, his thin lips pale blue, his wild eyes glittering as if their irises were set with rubies. His jacket was patchwork, his trousers the same. He looked, she thought, almost ridiculous, with his blood-stained motley and the hint of rouge on his jaundiced cheeks. You might think this is me reaching, but here's a bit of Candyman fan art of the Forbidden version. And if you need more evidence, I have a bit more. Clive Barker is English. He was still living in England when he wrote The Forbidden. It was published in 1986, and the Sixth Doctor's era was March 1984 until December 1986. Now, I've never read anything from Barker saying he was inspired by the look of the Sixth Doctor. Hell, I've never found anyone else online who's noticed a similarity between two characters. But I think it's a fair assumption to make that Barker was at least influenced. Candyman's voice in The Forbidden isn't the deep rasp that Tony Todd gave him. It's sweet, accentless, it sounds like honey. Obviously, that's not describing actual sounds, but Colin Baker has a very pleasant voice, and I could definitely see someone describe it like that if they were feeling a bit arty.
Well, even I would find it hard to lose myself in a corridor.
This is not a risk, Asmail. This is doomsday. One tiny error in your calculation, you'll blow a small hole in the universe. Boing! The largest of the 25 bells in the cathedral at Seville. Most distinctive. Look, I may look old to you, whiskerless youth, but I'll have you know I'm in the prime of my life. I'm only 900 years old now. Untie me at once.
Hell, you could go even further and theorize that Candyman was intended to look and sound like the Sixth Doctor as part of the themes of the story. In The Forbidden, Candyman is not a ghost. He's not like the filmed version, a wronged person become a murderous spirit. He's a fiction given reality by the beliefs of the people in the community. His hook hand is from the urban legend about a hook-handed murderer. The candy of his name comes from the urban legend about razor blades and sweets. He's made of people's ideas and fears, and even in the 80s, Doctor Who was still a cultural behemoth in the UK, though it was in a downturn. Six was a controversial doctor who opened his time in the TARDIS by trying to kill his companion. So there's every chance that in-universe, Candyman got his look from a terrified child who just watched Doctor Who. Because unlike the version in the 1992 film, who only probably kills kids, the version in The Forbidden most definitely kills them. So yeah, tell the story. Old Sixie is totally the Candyman. Though, sadly, not also this Candyman.
Sweets that are so good, so delicious that sometimes, if I'm on form, the human physiology is not equipped to bear the pleasure.